Have you ever felt the weight of knowing too much yet still feeling uncertain? You notice the small details others miss. You see through false smiles, empty conversations, and hollow praise. Your mind doesn't rest. It questions, analyzes, imagines everything that could go wrong. And though people may call you gifted, you often feel like you're carrying a burden that no one else sees. This is the quiet cost of a sharp mind. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." And that's the trap many intelligent people fall into. Not because they lack strength, but because they direct it inward, constantly judging, doubting, overreaching. You think more, you sense more. But with that sensitivity comes restlessness, isolation, and the pressure to always be right, always be strong, always be ahead. This video isn't a list of problems. It's a quiet look into the lives of those who carry this weight. Not to fix you, but to help you see that what feels like weakness might just be the shadow side of your strength. So if you've ever wondered why thinking so clearly can sometimes feel so heavy, stay with me. You might finally hear something that speaks to what you've never put into words. Burden 1. When the mind cuts itself. Why is it that the people who think the most often suffer the most? You'd think a sharp mind would protect you from suffering. That clarity, reason, and foresight would make life easier. But for some, it feels like the opposite. The very intelligence that allows them to see the world clearly also shows them every possible threat, every flaw in themselves, and every way things might fall apart. It's like carrying a sword you can't put down, always cutting, always carving reality into sharp pieces. The Stoics never saw the thinking mind as the ultimate gift. They saw it as a tool, and like any tool, it can become dangerous if not handled with discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts. A mind without mastery easily darkens its own world." I've known people who seemed like warriors on the outside, brilliant, capable, articulate. But behind that, their mind was always in conflict. One man I knew would wake before dawn, already rehearsing conversations that hadn't happened, reliving mistakes no one remembered, planning for disasters that never came. He wasn't weak. He was powerful, but undirected. He had no philosophy to guide that power, no discipline to silence the unnecessary noise. His thoughts ruled him, and not the other way around. This is the quiet struggle of many intelligent people. They don't crumble from a lack of ability. They collapse from too much awareness, turned inward without mercy. They see too much, feel too much, analyze too much. But they lack the inner architecture to make peace with what they see. The Stoics called this the absence of eupathia, calm, ordered emotion born from wisdom. Without it, the mind becomes a storm. But with it, you become a calm harbor, even when the winds howl. So what do you do if this is your story? You don't dim your mind, you discipline it. You don't stop thinking. You train your thoughts to serve you, not torture you. You live like a warrior, not by swinging your mind at everything that moves, but by choosing when to use it and when to put it down. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And for many, that suffering is endless because their imagination has never been taught the right way to serve the soul. If your mind is sharp, use it with purpose. Let it illuminate truth, not chase ghosts. Let it help you see life, not just predict danger. Because when your thoughts become your ally, not your enemy, you begin to experience the quiet strength the Stoics lived by. And once you learn to carry that sword with grace, you'll begin to see that intelligence is not your curse. It's your invitation to become something greater. Now, let's look at another hidden cost of a brilliant mind, the craving for perfection, and how it slowly poisons peace. Burden 2. Overthinking is not wisdom. Have you ever replayed a single sentence in your mind 100 times, trying to figure out what they really meant, wondering if you missed something, questioning whether you should have said things differently? Not because you're weak, but because your mind just doesn't know when to stop. It doesn't let things pass. It grips every word like it might hold the key to something deeper. This is the weight of overanalysis, the silent war of those who see too much, too fast, too deep. Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation, and this is exactly what happens when intelligence is untrained." A sharp mind without philosophy turns inward like a dagger, constantly questioning, revisiting, dissecting, searching for meanings that often aren't even there. Overthinking isn't insight. It's excess. It's the refusal to accept what has already happened. A resistance to simplicity. And the Stoics knew simplicity is freedom. I remember a woman I met during a seminar. She was brilliant, fluent in 3 languages, always ahead of everyone in her reasoning, but she was exhausted. After every conversation, she'd retreat into silence, reliving every phrase. "Do you think I offended him?" she'd ask. "Maybe I said too much or not enough." She wasn't foolish. She was a prisoner of her own intellect. Her mind, designed to illuminate, had become her captor. The Stoic warrior is different. He listens with clarity, speaks with intention, and lets the rest fall away. He doesn't scan each moment for hidden traps. He simply lives it, fully, honestly, and then he moves on. Why? Because he knows that the mind, if left unguarded, becomes a tyrant, turning every ordinary moment into a courtroom of what-ifs and imagined accusations. To think clearly is a gift, but to know when to stop thinking, that is mastery. That is the right way to carry a strong mind. When you find yourself stuck in loops of analysis, ask yourself, what am I trying to control? The past, another's perception, an outcome I've already influenced. Most likely, what you're clinging to is not truth, but fear, and fear has never made a wise decision. Seneca wrote, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Overanalysis is a form of self-inflicted suffering. It feels like intelligence, but often it's just disguised fear, dressed in the language of logic. If your mind keeps turning, pause, breathe, choose to release what no longer serves clarity. Because the warrior doesn't fight every battle. He knows which ones are worth his energy and which ones are just shadows pretending to be enemies. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let the thought go. Now let's step deeper into the next struggle, the silent craving for perfection and the invisible chains it wraps around even the strongest minds. Burden 3. The trap of perfection. Have you ever stood in front of 2 perfectly good choices, frozen, not because neither was good enough, but because you feared choosing the wrong one? You calculate, you rehearse, you replay the decision long after it's made. Not because you're unsure, but because deep down, anything less than perfect feels like failure. This is the hidden torment of those who always seek the flawless path. And the irony? It's never the world that demands this. It's the mind, untrained in detachment, obsessed with control. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. It is the truth I seek, which never harmed anyone. The harm is to persist in one's self-deception and ignorance." The Stoic path is not one of flawless action, it is one of honest correction. But for the perfectionist mind, every choice becomes a battlefield between fear and illusion. I once met a young man named Elias who could outthink anyone in the room, whether it was a speech, a business pitch, or even choosing what to wear. He had to get it exactly right. He'd spend hours reviewing minor word choices in an email, editing his resume a dozen times before sending it, walking in circles over decisions that most people made in seconds. And the worst part? His brilliance was invisible to him, buried under layers of doubt, stress, and second-guessing. He wasn't living, he was measuring. The Stoics taught that striving for excellence is noble, but clinging to perfection is self-inflicted punishment. The wise man does not demand flawlessness. He demands virtue, intention, and courage in action. He knows that true peace comes not from making the perfect move, but from moving with reason, accepting the result, and letting it go. The warrior in Stoic philosophy does not win every battle. He doesn't even expect to. He simply shows up prepared, acts with clarity, and accepts whatever follows with composure. That is the right way, not chasing an illusion of perfection, but mastering the discipline of release. If you find yourself trapped in endless planning, fearful of small missteps, remember, a step forward, imperfect but honest, is always stronger than endless hesitation. Life is not a test with one correct answer. It's a field of choices, and every moment wasted on the fear of doing it wrong is a moment lost to living. Seneca said, "No man was ever wise by chance. Wisdom is not in getting everything right. It is in learning when good is good enough and when to put your energy into what truly matters. So take the step, make the choice, and free yourself from the illusion that everything must be perfect." Now let's step into another quiet truth. How the sharpest minds often carry burdens that the body cannot ignore. Burden 4. When thought exhausts the body. Have you ever felt physically drained even when you haven't done anything exhausting? As if your body is breaking under a weight no one else can see. You sleep, but you don't rest. You breathe, but it feels shallow. You eat, but something still aches inside. This is a reality many sharp minds quietly endure, not because they are weak, but because they carry their tension on the inside, hidden behind quiet eyes and long thoughts. The Stoics believed the soul and the body are deeply intertwined. Epictetus reminded us, it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. And when your mind never pauses, when it constantly worries, predicts, and scans for meaning, it creates a storm within. That storm doesn't stay confined to the intellect. Over time, it spills into the body. I once knew a teacher, brilliant, thoughtful, reserved. He rarely raised his voice, but his mind was always racing. He spent hours preparing lectures most wouldn't notice, worried endlessly about every word, every reaction. He began to suffer from fatigue, chronic pain, and strange flare-ups. Doctors couldn't explain much, but you could see it in his posture, in the way he held his breath, without knowing it. His body had become the battlefield for a war he never stopped fighting in his mind. The Stoics would not be surprised by this. They understood that inner agitation weakens the fortress of the soul, and over time the body too begins to erode. This is why they trained not just their thoughts, but their responses. Because every unexamined worry becomes a weight, and every repeated tension shapes the flesh. You see, the warrior who never sets down his shield, even in peace, soon wounds himself from within. Intelligence without temperance becomes this, a constant readiness for battle, even when there is no enemy, and the body cannot carry that forever. So what's the right way to live with a mind like this? It's not to silence your thoughts, but to train them to serve you, not haunt you. To focus not on every possibility, but on what is real and present. To see the limits of your control and honor them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That same principle applies within. If it is not helpful, do not dwell on it. You are not fragile. But even a warrior must learn to rest, to breathe, to stop fighting ghosts. Your strength lies not in constant effort, but in knowing when effort is no longer needed. Protect your body by calming your mind. That is not indulgence, it is discipline. Next, let us explore another quiet truth. How the most gifted minds often turn against themselves, not through weakness, but through the unbearable pressure of their own self-awareness. Burden 5. The mirror that judges too hard. Have you ever stood in front of a mirror, not to admire yourself, but to search for flaws no one else notices? You see where you fell short, where you could have said more, done more, been more. While others may praise you, your mind quietly whispers, "You're not there yet." This is the inner landscape of many intelligent people. They see clearly, not just the world, but themselves. And that clarity without compassion becomes a blade they turn inward. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." And often this suffering is born not from external judgment, but from the tireless critic within. When you know enough to recognize your own limitations, every small imperfection feels like a failing. Every incomplete thought, every flawed execution becomes evidence, not of growth, but of unworthiness. I remember a gifted engineer who built systems others couldn't even imagine. His peers admired him, his students looked up to him, but he lived in quiet torment. Every success was met with suspicion. Was it really good enough? He'd ask. He once told me, "I don't fear failure. I fear not being better than I was yesterday." And that sounds noble until it robs you of peace, of presence, of the ability to breathe between battles. This is where Stoicism offers a path, not to lower your standards, but to carry them differently. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. The right way forward isn't to ignore your flaws. It's to meet them with reason, to see them as areas to refine, not wounds to punish. The warrior in Stoic philosophy knows he is not perfect, but he also knows that doubting his worth at every step is not humility, it's self-sabotage. True strength lies in the ability to act, even when the mind is uncertain. To stand firm, not because you are flawless, but because your cause is worthy and your character is sound. If this speaks to you, if you've felt paralyzed by your own self-awareness, remember this. You don't need to be certain to move forward. You only need to be honest and courageous enough to begin. So take the next step. And if you've seen this truth in your own life or someone else's, comment below with the word clarity to show that you too are learning to master this inner mirror. And if you find value in this journey, subscribe to the channel. Not for more noise, but for more space. Space to think clearly, live simply, and grow like the Stoic warrior you are becoming. Now let's turn to a deeper burden. One that follows the intelligent mind into every room, every challenge, the pressure to always deliver. Burden 6. The weight of always being ready. Have you ever laid awake at night, mind racing, not from panic, but from trying to prepare for every possible outcome? You calculate, rehearse, rethink again and again. You're not afraid of difficulty. You just want to be ready. But somehow, no matter how much you prepare, the weight never lifts. This is the quiet tension that sharp minds carry, and often the world doesn't see it. On the outside, they're composed, capable, resilient. But within, a storm brews, one not caused by failure, but by the relentless need to anticipate it. The Stoics understood this suffering well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Today I escaped anxiety." Or no, I discarded it because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. He wasn't denying the difficulty of life. He was pointing to the truth that most pressure isn't caused by the world, but by how we choose to meet it. I remember a designer named Theo. He worked alone in a quiet room, and yet he always seemed on edge, not because of deadlines, but because of his own mind. For every project, he imagined 20 outcomes. He'd visualize every flaw a client might point out, every way the work could be misunderstood. He wasn't driven by fear of others, but by a standard that kept moving, even after he reached it. And though he produced brilliance, he often said he felt like a man constantly running from an invisible fire. This is how stress grows, not from chaos, but from over-control, from trying to grasp every detail, account for every scenario, fix problems that haven't happened yet. The more a person relies on thought to create safety, the more they become trapped by it. The warrior understands this trap. He knows that it's not his job to control every outcome, only to prepare with care, act with courage, and accept what comes with honor. That is the right way. Anything beyond that is noise. It drains the spirit and weakens the body. Seneca said, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." The same applies to the mind that is always projecting forward. The present moment becomes a blur. The body becomes tight. Breath shortens. Life becomes not something lived, but something survived. So, how do you carry a sharp mind without letting it consume you? You draw a line. You say, "I will prepare, but I will not obsess. I will think, but I will not overthink. I will meet challenges when they come, not in advance, not in fear." The Stoic trains not just for the battle, but for the calm. He learns to rest between trials, and in doing so, he conserves strength for when it truly matters. Let go of the need to solve everything ahead of time. That's not discipline, it's despair in disguise. Discipline is trust in action, and the greatest proof of your strength is peace where others expect pressure. Now let's turn to another hidden challenge, the weight of expectations and how even brilliance can feel like a trap when you're always expected to exceed it. Burden 7. Chained by expectations. What happens when people stop seeing you and only see what you're supposed to achieve? When your worth is measured not by your presence, but by your performance? For many intelligent individuals, the moment they show early signs of excellence, the weight begins to fall. Praise quietly transforms into pressure. The question is no longer, "How are you?" but "What have you done lately?" And somewhere along the way, doing well becomes the minimum. Anything less than exceptional feels like failure. The Stoics would call this an attachment to externals, placing your value in things outside your control. Seneca warned, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." And the mind that constantly chases approval, perfection, or the impossible standard of always being better eventually loses touch with its center. I once knew a young woman named Mira. She was the kind of student who always stood out, first to answer, last to leave, never missed a deadline. But behind the surface, she was exhausted. Every accomplishment fed a quiet fear. What if I can't do it again? Even when praised, she smiled with unease because she knew the next task would be harder and the applause shorter. Her parents meant well. Her teachers admired her. But somewhere in the mix, no one told her it was okay to just be, to rest, to stumble, to grow slowly. The tragedy wasn't that she failed. The tragedy was that she didn't know how to fail. She had been taught how to shine, but not how to endure shadow. The Stoic warrior walks a different path. He does not reject responsibility, nor does he shrink from high standards, but he never confuses those things with his identity. He shows up fully, gives his best, and accepts the results without clinging to them. That is the right way, to care deeply without being owned by the outcome. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. It is not their actions that disturb us, but our judgments of them. And sometimes the harshest judgments don't come from others. They live inside us, quietly echoing every time we fall short." If you've carried this burden of being the one everyone expects to succeed, to perform, to impress, ask yourself this: whose voice are you listening to? And is it leading you toward wisdom or away from peace? You were not made to live under constant pressure. You were made to act with reason, to strive with discipline, and to rest with dignity when the day is done. And when you begin to let go of what the world demands, you create space for what your soul truly needs. Now, let's turn to something equally draining: the restless mind that never stops moving, constantly pulled in every direction, unable to stay with just one thing. Burden 8. Lost in too many paths. Have you ever sat down to focus on one thing, just one, and suddenly found your mind leaping to 10 others? Not because you're lazy, but because your thoughts branch faster than you can follow. Ideas flood in, competing for attention. Possibilities multiply. And soon, you're overwhelmed not by the lack of options, but by the abundance of them. This is the paradox of a sharp mind. It sees too many paths and fears choosing the wrong one. It seeks clarity, but ends up tangled in its own speed. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." For the Stoic, clarity comes not from reducing the world, but from ordering the mind. I once worked with a strategist named Leon. Give him any problem, and he could generate 20 brilliant solutions in an hour. But when it came time to act, he stalled. He'd weigh every option, then revisit them again. Deadlines passed. Tasks multiplied, not because he didn't care, but because he couldn't quiet the flood of possibilities. He'd say, "What if I choose the wrong path?" And so he chose none. The noise in his mind drowned out the wisdom in his soul. The Stoics would call this a lack of discipline in attention. The mind, untrained, becomes like a lamp with no direction, casting light everywhere, but illuminating nothing. The warrior knows that energy must be focused. He does not charge into every doorway. He surveys, he selects, and once he moves, he does not look back. To be easily distracted is not a defect of intelligence. It is the result of untrained perception. The more capable your mind, the more essential it becomes to master your attention. This is the right way. To filter the essential from the trivial. To act not when every possibility is resolved, but when reason has pointed to a worthy path. Seneca taught, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Distraction is not merely lost time, it is lost clarity, lost peace, lost self-trust. And when you scatter your mind too widely, your spirit forgets how to commit. So if your thoughts often outpace your actions, return to this. What truly matters now? What deserves your full presence? The Stoic does not chase every glimmer. He walks steadily toward the flame that lights his true purpose. And speaking of burdens carried in silence, let's now look at how the most intelligent among us often feel unseen in a crowd, connected to everything, yet understood by no one. Burden 9. Alone in a room full of people. Have you ever walked into a room full of people, smiles, laughter, chatter, and felt completely alone? Not because you're antisocial, not because you're shy, but because you can't seem to find a place to anchor your mind. The voices are loud, but the conversations feel hollow. And somewhere inside, you quietly ask yourself, why am I even here? This is the silent discomfort many intelligent people feel in large groups. It's not about being introverted or withdrawn. It's about feeling disconnected in a space where your thoughts have nowhere to land. Epictetus once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." And in many social circles, people aren't speaking to learn. They're speaking to be heard. The intelligent mind, sharpened by reflection, seeks depth. It seeks substance. And when all it receives are shallow exchanges, it begins to retreat, not out of superiority, but out of weariness. I knew someone like this, a man named Caleb. In meetings, parties, even family dinners, he often sat quietly, listening. Not because he had nothing to say, but because everything around him felt like static. He told me once, "I see the games, the pretending, the small performances. It drains me. I'd rather have one real conversation than 100 empty ones." And I understood. He wasn't cold. He was simply tired of wading through noise in search of truth. The Stoic does not chase belonging in every room. He does not need to be surrounded to feel seen. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." The warrior knows that solitude isn't weakness. It is a sanctuary. He doesn't avoid people, but he chooses his company with care. He does not resent the world's noise, but he refuses to be shaped by it. If you find yourself uncomfortable in large gatherings, not because you dislike people, but because you crave connection, don't mistake that for a flaw. It's not a lack of social skill, it's a hunger for sincerity, and that hunger should not be ignored. You are not made to fit into every space. You are made to bring presence where presence is rare, and that often means walking away from places that only echo, to find the few that truly speak to you. So if the crowd feels heavy, step back, protect your energy, reclaim your peace. That is the right way for a soul that values truth over noise. Now let's turn to a final burden, a quiet habit that follows many brilliant minds, the urge to worry about everything and the hidden wisdom behind that worry. Burden 10. The storm inside the mind. Have you ever sat alone in a quiet room, no noise, no chaos, yet still felt like your mind was running through a storm? You think about what might happen, what could go wrong, what you should have said, what you didn't say. You analyze every detail, even the ones no one else noticed. And even when everything seems fine, something inside you whispers, "But what if it's not?" This is the invisible companion many intelligent people carry. Worry. Not the loud, panicked kind, but the silent, constant hum of anticipation, of scanning every scenario, every word, every silence for signs of danger. The Stoics didn't see worry as weakness. They saw it as a misuse of reason. Epictetus said, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them." And in the intelligent mind, judgments run deep. You don't just see what's in front of you, you see what could come after. And while that foresight can be a strength, it becomes a burden when it never rests. I once met a man named Julian, a writer, strategist, thinker. His mind was like a maze, every idea branching into 20 others. He didn't struggle with intelligence, he struggled with peace. "My mind won't shut off," he told me. "Even when things are going well, I'm already imagining the cracks." He would go through a full conversation, then later dissect it alone. Did I say too much? Was that the right tone? What if they misunderstood me? He wasn't paranoid. He was precise, sharp. But that sharpness cut both ways. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Today I escaped from anxiety." Or no, I discarded it because it was within me, in my own perceptions. For them, the battle was never with the world. It was with the mind's relationship to the world. The problem isn't worry. The problem is forgetting that worry is optional. Here's what many don't realize. Worry is a byproduct of attention. You notice more. You imagine more. You consider more angles, more consequences, more what-ifs. That's not weakness, that's the shadow of intelligence. But when you give every thought the same weight, you become a servant to your imagination. A warrior must know when to sheath the sword. The same applies to thought. It's not enough to see every possibility. You must decide which ones are worth acting on and which deserve silence. That is the right way. Not silencing your intelligence, but governing it, leading it, knowing when your thoughts are serving you and when they are sabotaging your peace. Julian eventually learned a practice. He called it the pause. When his mind began to spiral, he'd write the worry down, look at it and ask, "Can I act on this now? If not, I let it go." It wasn't easy. But over time, he learned that not every thought needs a solution. Some just need space. And when he started honoring that space, he began to reclaim his energy. Seneca warned, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality, and the intelligent often suffer most, not from failure, but from imagined failure, from preparing for storms that never come, rehearsing pain that never arrives." So what's the way out? You don't destroy worry, you outgrow it. You learn to see it not as truth, but as noise. You remember that your mind is a tool, not your master. And when the thoughts start circling, you pause, you breathe, you say, "Not now." That simple act is power. It's not suppression, it's sovereignty. The intelligent mind will always imagine more, but it is the disciplined mind that lives well. And if you've carried this burden, this constant hum of worry, know this: you are not broken. You are simply gifted with a mind that sees too much. Your task is not to quiet it, but to lead it. That is the path of the Stoic warrior. A path not of silence, but of order. Not of denial, but of detachment. Not of perfection, but of inner command. So if your mind worries too much, let it speak. But do not always listen. Listen only when it is useful, honest, and in service of your peace. That is your power. That is your freedom. And with that, we've reached the end of this journey, not to diagnose or define, but to reveal. Because intelligence, as noble as it is, carries a price. But with the right philosophy, that price becomes a path. A path not just to brilliance, but to stillness. Keep walking it. You're not alone. So these were 10 silent weights that many intelligent minds carry. If any part of this felt familiar, you are not alone. Your sharpness is not a flaw, and your inner battles do not make you broken. They make you human, aware, and capable of great growth. If something in this spoke to you, write quiet strength in the comments. It lets us know you're walking this path too, with honesty and reflection. And if you'd like more spaces like this to pause, think, and return to your center, feel free to subscribe. We'll keep walking this journey together, one step at a time. Your mind is powerful. Guide it the right way, and it will become your greatest ally. In our next video, we'll look at how to stay calm when the world tries to shake you. Until then, be steady. Be kind to yourself. You're exactly where you need to be.